Hey, everybody. Welcome, 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 welcome. Come on in. We're going right into our show today. Want to welcome everyone to Magnificent Monday. So glad to have you with me today. And we're going to have a great show. Great show. So let me know you're here. Let me know you're here on this Magnificent Monday. Uh, you know what? Write in the chat where you're from. Everybody know I'm from Orlando, Florida, and I want you to let me know where you're from this morning. Write that in the chat. Let me know what city, what state you're from. Just write that in the chat. Let me know you're here. Let me know that it's a magnificent Monday for you. And we're going to get started. And I have a great conversation for you today. So I want you to let me know you're here. Again, this is we come on every Monday at this time. This is your brother. Somebody called me Dr. D the other day, and I kind of like that a little bit, but it's Dr. David Walker, and we come on every Monday at this time with our show Magnificent Monday. And somebody said to me, well, why do you call it Magnificent Monday? And I always say that because I believe that Monday is the most magnificent day of the week. It's the day after Sunday. It's the day after the weekend. And I think that it is a day that we can start the week off and start it off right. So now, as I said, I'm in Orlando, Florida. And it's kind of interesting because I think I need to get rid of the elephant in the room. And as you can see, here it is, the elephant in the room. And I want to talk about it because some of you may be saying, you live in Orlando, Florida. How in the world could it be magnificent living in Orlando, Florida? On yesterday, we got a report that said over 15,000 people contracted the coronavirus on yesterday, or at least they reported it on yesterday. 15,000 people. So somebody said, well, if you live in Orlando and I'm right here in the middle, near Disney, how in the world could you say that today is a magnificent day? Well, the reason why I say it's a magnificent day is because in spite of what's happening around me, I see opportunity. I see opportunity in everything. So even though sickness is around, some are being challenged by it, I see this as a magnificent opportunity to do great things, to inspire people, to change lives, just to have a great day and a great life. So again, today is Magnificent Monday, and I'm looking forward to a great conversation. All right. So here's what I want to talk about today. Now, most of you know I have a podcast that comes out every Tuesday. And the name of that podcast is called Beyond the Culture. Yes, Beyond the Culture. Every Tuesday on iTunes, my podcast comes out, and it's a show where we embrace change and challenge cultural norms and ideals. And I have conversations with people in education and sports and business and entertainment. And I just have conversations with people who, as the title of the podcast says, who go beyond the culture, meaning no limitations, no barriers, no hindrances, and not that they're not there, but they go beyond what people say that they can't do. They go beyond cultural barriers, beyond barriers that they've experienced growing up in a particular culture, barriers, physical barriers, mental barriers, people who go beyond the culture. In every single show, we have a great conversation. So on yesterday, I had a conversation with a young lady by the name of Merlina Valentine. Yes, Merlina Valentine. And she's a former educator, but Merlina had a very serious incident in her life. Life had thrown her a setback, and I got a chance to interview her. So what was her setback? The setback was that she contracted a deadly disease by the name of sepsis, and it caused a blood clot in her body, and ultimately she became a quadruple amputee. That's right, a quadruple amputee, which means that 4 of her limbs were severed, both her hands and also her 2 legs below the knee. So she was a quadruple amputee. But in that interview, she said something, and I thought I would talk about it today. And I asked the question, have you ever had a defining moment? Yes, have you ever had a defining moment? And I think that what I want to do, because in the interview, she talked about the defining moment in her life. And so I think what I want to do now is I really want to kind of say, well, somebody may be saying, well, Dr. David, what is a defining moment? And how do you define a defining moment? So let me define it for you. So this way we know what we're talking about. So a defining moment is an event which typifies or determines all subsequent related events or related occurrences. Also, it's certain events in life, watch this, that shapes what a person becomes. It's certain events in your life that shapes the person that you become. So for this young lady, her defining moment was when she got this dreaded disease. She had to have 4 of her limbs amputated. But what she did was she tells the story about how she took that moment and what she then made of herself and made of her life. All right. Now, I want to throw this out because oftentimes I talk about a defining moment. Even when I give speeches and I talk about my life, I had a defining moment in my life. And a lot of you had a defining moment. You know, it's the moment in your life that made you who you are. It's the moment in your life that shaped the person that you became. Now, there was a movie some years ago, and I always use this in my conversation when I'm giving my speech. There was a movie called Tinka, and there's an actor in Tinka called Kevin Costner. Everybody knows Kevin Costner, you know, from The Bodyguard, Dancing with Wolves, you know, that Kevin Costner. But in that movie, he said this. He said, when a defining moment comes, either you define the moment or the moment defines you. Let me say that again. When a defining moment comes, either you define the moment or the moment defines you. So basically, a defining moment says, what are you going to do when this thing happens? How are you going to respond when this event just seems to land in your lap? It seems to come from nowhere. You were not expecting it, but it hit you. The question is, what are you going to do when the defining moment of your life comes? So my question to you who are listening to me today is, have you ever experienced a defining moment? If you've experienced a defining moment, I just want you to write in the chat just something that it may, hopefully it's not all that personal, or even if it is, it's something that you can share. But have you ever experienced a defining moment? And again, a defining moment is the event in your life that shaped the person that you became. Now, I want to ask this as a question, because sometimes people will say that if a thing happened, if a particular event happened, I know how I'm going to respond in the midst of that crisis. I'm of the firm belief that no one can actually say what they will do in the midst of a crisis until you actually go through the crisis. So many of us believe that if you had the death of a child, you would know how to handle it. You believe that if your marriage dissolved, you would know how to handle it. You believe that if you went through a health crisis, you would know how to handle it. But you really cannot determine the true character in you until you go through the experience. So this young lady, she had an experience. Again, she lost 4 of her limbs, but she came back. She grabbed life by the horn. She grabbed devastation by the horn. She grabbed her personal tragedy by the horns, and she says, I'm going to come back from it. And I'm not going to give you the whole story, and I'm going to ask you to listen to the show on tomorrow, and you'll hear the whole conversation about her life. But it is about a defining moment. How will you handle this defining moment when it comes? What will you do? What is your defining moment? What was the defining moment that you had in your life? So if you're listening there, if you listen to me, I want you to write a defining moment you might have experienced. Something, again, it may have been tragic, but how did you respond with it? How did you come through with it? Did you have to go through it by yourself? Did you have the love of family? Was it a journey where you had the love of community that helped you, right? So it's a defining moment, and we really don't know how we're going to respond. So here's what helped her, and I think that this is the same thing that will help all of us, no matter who you are. That's going to help you whenever a defining moment comes. Here's the first thing. Number 1 is love, right? Love. Love of who? Love of God. Love of family, right? Here's one, love of yourself. See, if you love yourself, that helps to give you the fortitude to be able to come back whenever you experience that defining moment. Here's another thing. You have to have faith and trust in God. Oh yeah. So many people, when they go through their experiences, they lose faith in God and they stop trusting in God. I think that is the time when we should have faith and trust in God the most, is when we're going through something. Because if you're not going through anything, anybody can say, I trust God, I believe God, but how about when you're going through? Can you trust God when you're having a tragedy in your life? Can you trust God when your health is poor? Can you trust God when your money is not right? Can you trust God? All right. And because with love, faith, and trust in God, that's enough for anybody to recover from any journey. So a defining moment. It's the thing that you go through that makes you who you are. It's the thing that shapes you. And usually when you have that defining moment, and let me just throw another quote. There's another gentleman by the name of Charles Swindle. He had a quote that says, life is, 10% of what happens to you, but 90% of life is how you respond to it, how you react to it, right? And so it's important to not be concerned about what happens to you, but how are you going to respond? How are you going to handle that defining moment? How are you going to handle that tragedy of life? You lost a job. My niece, Robin, is on. Thank you for joining me, Robin. I'm sure you have a story of having a defining moment of something happening. And maybe when it happened, it looked like you weren't going to make it. It looked like you didn't know how things were going to work themselves out. But with determination and commitment and dedication, you were able to come through. And so most of us really have had something in our lives where the true character that was in us, we had to really find out. Because it's one thing to say that, oh, I can handle that. If I went through that, I know what to do. I believe that none of us actually knows how to really handle a situation until you actually go through it. Have you had a defining moment? Have you had a moment in your life where you discovered the true you, the true character in you? Have you had a situation that showed you that you really have a fortitude in you, that you really have a determination in you? We've all had it. We've all had that experience. And yes, we're all going to have a defining moment. But the question is, when the defining moment comes, how will you handle it? Will you throw in the towel? Will you quit? Will you take the position that you can't go on, that you can't live life? Or will you take the position of, no, this is not going to define me, but I will define the situation. I will define the storm. I will define this crisis. I will define this poor relationship. I will define the fact that my health is bad. I will define what's going to happen. It's in your hands how you handle the defining moment. So I want you to, on tomorrow, Beyond the Culture goes live. Every Tuesday goes live. If you want to, you can go and listen to a couple of episodes right now, either on iTunes, or you can go to my website, beyondtheculturepodcast.com. And I have previous shows that you can listen to. But tomorrow, I talked to a young lady by the name of Merlina Valentine. And she is a quadruple amputee, meaning she had 4 of her limbs severed, her 2 hands, and her legs below the knee. She was an educator. When it happened, obviously she was a principal, and she made a commitment to herself, and she made a commitment to those who believed in her, that she was going to come back. She was going to sit back in that principal's desk. She was going to lead those young children in their education. And she is a story of survival, hope, determination, and success. So join me tomorrow on Beyond the Culture. I want to thank you for joining me on this magnificent Monday. And I want you to enjoy the day knowing that every day is magnificent if you're determined to live a life of happiness. You have a great day. Take care.